Yeah, but we're played live at St. John's University in Queens, New York, as that's where my university is. And yeah, that's where my show takes place. We're honored to
Oh,
have you here all the way from, you're in Toronto right now, right?
yeah. I mean, well, Brampton, but
Yeah.
essentially the same thing. Yeah.
How is it out there?
Well, we just got another lockdown as of 2 days ago, so it's even more restricted than before. You can't really do anything, but
Yeah.
I guess it's just time to like lock in and get content from the house, right?
Yeah, it's been a crazy time. How bad is it out there? Because I feel as though the United States is really bad with COVID-19.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty bad here. I haven't compared like the numbers. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot less people here, so it might seem like it's less, but it might be like ratio wise the same. So I'm not 100%, but I can say the region that I'm in, Brampton or Peel region, is like the worst in Ontario. So there's like a,
Yeah.
excuse me on the numbers, but I was told it's like a 17% transmission rate in the city that I'm in, which is like ridiculous. Toronto's like 3 to 5%. So in comparison, it's like, I don't know why there's so many more cases up here, but yeah, they're really cracking down now because I guess it's just transmitting fast over the Christmas season. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. It's pretty bad though.
Yeah, I mean, I blame my disgraceful president that we have here now. Thank God he's gone. And next week I'm counting down, thank God, because I think things are going to get a little better with the pandemic in the States right now. And it's unbelievable what's happened here. But congratulations on the new single. I just saw it came out and they sent it to me a co-sign. It's in the rotation. And let the audience who's listening know what the track is about and what was the inspiration for it and what was it like working with Old Man Saxon.
Yeah, AntiSocial was a track that I worked on amongst a number of tracks that I worked on when the pandemic first hit. It was like, what else am I going to do? And I was actually going to, like, I was touring in the States in February. So we had connected with Old Man Saxon's team because I'd watched Rhythm and Flow. I liked his vibe. I thought he was kind of like quirky and kind of like niche market, a little like different and left the field like me. So I thought it would be really cool to kind of connect with him and open for him. So I was actually slotted to open for him in April in 2 states. And obviously everything was canceled. So when I wrote this song, I had the idea of like, why don't we try to get him on a record since we can't connect the way we were supposed to? And that just felt like the right song. And I actually sent him 2 songs and he resonated most with this one. So I was like, okay, that's a sign. Mm-hmm. So I got him to hop on the record, produced by myself and Devontae. And yeah, I think that record, I really enjoy it. Of the 3 drops that I put out over the last couple of months, it's the first one that my brother didn't touch. This one was actually a different producer. So I feel the energy of is a little less dark. Like there's still a lot of dark elements to it, especially the lyrical content, but the melody is kind of a little bit brighter and bouncier, which is something that I find you don't hear from me as much. So I wanted to explore that a little bit. And it's interesting because we planned to roll this song out this month, but when the whole Capitol breach thing happened, I just felt like it was really indicative of how I'm feeling. Like even with the pandemic, like the rules were in a stay-at-home order now. The rules are changing every day. And then you have like things happening halfway across the world. There's things going on in Uganda right now. Like sometimes you want to be fully invested and engaged and kind of champion, be a bit of like a spokesperson for the people that are championing these experiences. But sometimes you just want to shut everything off and you want to just kind of focus on yourself and retreat within self and focus on your own progressions. And that's what that song was, kind of me sinking into that energy and focusing on that. And like those moments where you don't want kind of like the constant chaos and the constant noise and everything that's kind of happening. You like kind of you got to shut it out sometimes. So that's what that song is about. And I feel like the timing happened to really work out really well. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you think social media has made us more antisocial?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of social media and then this pandemic. I mean, like social distancing is literally the move, so you can't connect with people the same way. I know for me, I used to be way too much at shows. I used to let people get very in my space. I used to hug everybody and handshakes, and I know I probably won't go back to that now, just with the way the world is adjusted. And that, in a sense, I think will make me feel like I'm being a little less social, if you will. But definitely social media has been I would say it contributed to that for many years. And I think with the combination of these changes and social media, and even just social media being the only way to do interviews, engagements, connect,
Yep.
I think we're gonna get to a very weird place when it comes to social interaction. I don't know what it's gonna look like. So this song could be like the initial conversation to a whole change we have yet to even consider. So I guess we'll see, right?
Yep. It can be the anthem for it. It speaks to
Yeah.
what the times are right now. And that's what your music does. You mentioned lyrical content before, and you can hear it when you speak. You're well spoken. A lot of these artists I interview now, which are because the reason why you're on my show is because you're a lyrical artist and you have a lot of talent. I appreciate the lyrical artists who take their craft very seriously. First, the trap and drill artists, not so much. They just have to come on here to please my audience. But it shows in your music. You really do care about your craft, and you have a story to tell, and it's important. You listen to the stories you tell. I heard the song that you made, and you talked about slavery and jails and everything that's going on in the world, and it's important for people to hear that.
Yeah, thank you so much, by the way, for posting about it earlier and having me on your platform. I really appreciate it. And I think sometimes it's just concepts that I've had in my mind that I wasn't comfortable enough to even talk about in high school or when I was in college. But now, as an adult, I found the willingness, I guess, to discuss my real experiences despite those that I make uncomfortable. And I'm grateful for those that are willing to give me a platform despite the discomfort that we all know some of these songs, some of these ideas and interviews could be instigating or
Yeah.
inciting. Like we have to kind of challenge the social norms, and racism and systematic racism is a social norm. So we have to challenge that. Um, I'm grateful to feel strong enough to do that, you know, in a world and in a country where there was a time where my counterparts would tell me my experiences weren't real. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like, I guess you're right. And now it's like, no, you're absolutely wrong. I know what I've lived. I know what I've experienced. And I'm actually going to tell you about it. And I hope that you have arguments with your family at the dinner table over this, because we have to break down those social norms and those constructs. And I think the conversations are the best way to start that. So I'm just grateful that there are people that are helping me get, the message a little bit further.
Yeah. You're definitely 100% an MC. You teach people with your music, and that's not something artists do anymore. You're supposed to learn something out of it. And I wish that more white people would sit down and listen to these songs because they'd actually receive some real education here, because I grew up in a Black community and I can call out the racism when I see it. I've had teachers in my high school, because I went to a Catholic high school. I hated it. I didn't fit in. And I've seen how teachers treated the Black students. I remember they tell them, pull up your pants. He's so disrespectful. Why are you acting that way? See, I noticed that. And I even took offense to it because those are my friends. I grew up in a Black community. Those are my friends.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it's very important for a lot, like all voices that I guess have something positive contribute to the conversation to do so. And I think as powerful as it is for me to talk about it, and I'm trying to occupy that space, I think it's very powerful for you to talk about it as well, because you're going to hit a different audience than I'm going to hit. You're American, I'm Canadian. So even from that, you're a man, I'm a woman, I'm Black, you're white. So we have completely different audiences that we can kind of have that shift with, but the messaging might be the same. And I think that is where we hopefully will see, some of these kind of walls breaking down, is because there's so many different people from so many different walks of life that are kind of speaking to the same thing, and hopefully eliminating the ignorance that is really obvious to you and me, but to some people is like the way that they live, the way that they think, So yeah, I definitely get you.
Yeah. And being a big sports fan, it kills me when I hear someone that's white say, oh, if he wasn't out playing ball, he'd be stealing pocketbooks. That the amount of times I've heard that before, it's just like, do you really need to say that? It's just so ignorant when I hear that all the time, because it's like you have white athletes that play too.
Mm-hmm. And that really relates to me as a rapper, because I'm like a well-spoken rapper. So you get I smoke weed, I have dreads. So you have the preconceived notion of what somebody like me, I'm dark skinned. There's just a lot of things like on the outer, there's assumptions people would make. And it's assumptions that come with Black people, but I'm like the blackest of them all. So you're gonna really see me in that light. And so as a rapper, it just kind of solidifies, I think, some of those stereotypes. But then with the ability to communicate in a way that people perceive rappers to not be able to, which is absolutely not true. And certain things like that, I think that I get kind of like this weird middleman thing where it's like, okay, you're in that box, but like then you're kind of not. So you're like a tolerable person of color, a tolerable minority, if you will. So it's like I would think that's similar to sports in that you get put in that box of, well, you know, Black people are only good for, or certain people are only good for rapping or basketball, or like it's
Yeah.
part of that box that we get put
Yep.
in. So it's really interesting when people meet me as a rapper first versus like when I used to have like regular jobs and they met me as like an employee of a company, and the way that I would get treated first versus when they realized what that cross was, the fact that I, you know, I speak like this, but I'm also a rapper. Like, it's just funny. It's not funny, but it is at the same time, because it's like people's ignorance really like screams at you because they don't know how to manage their preconceived notions and biases. So the moment they hear of you being a rapper, like they talk to and about you as if you're unintelligent. Then when you hit them with that verbiage, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you could talk like that," you know. And then it's
Yeah.
funny, you get the reverse, the other way around.
Yep.
So I can only imagine with sports. I used to play ball, but I'm a short person, so I stopped. But I'm sure if I kept playing ball, it would be a very similar thing. And you know, as somebody who enjoys playing sports for fun and enjoys rapping, you know, for sport, yeah, I think people sometimes don't know what box to put me in. And the idea is we need to break the notions that there are boxes that we got to put people in. So you know, just by existing, I hope that I'm, you know, starting to break down some of those walls.
Yeah. Something I noticed too, in relation to everything with racism and the music that you speak about. And I want to bring this topic in because I listen to some sports stations. I'm going to call them out. I remember hearing Boomer Esiason on his radio show when the protests were going on with George Floyd. He was basically saying on his show, "Oh, I see who's not obeying the police." But then you have all of a sudden you see his racial tones and you know what he basically aligned with Trump, and the things he was saying were aligned with that. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Dre's in the hospital and they're sending him get well wishes. And this is something that I translate. And do you notice it when Black people have money? Are they accepted by white people then? Racist
I
white
would say
people.
to a degree. I would say to a degree, yes. To a degree, yes. I think there is an element of like, no matter how much money you have, depending on the person, like there's a hierarchy, and Black people are lower than that. So like, I grew up in an environment where I was surrounded by, I would say, like kind of more impoverished, lower class white people, and we were growing up in that area, and just us being like a very together Black family, mom and dad in the house, 4 daughters that play the piano. It was like they treated us like we were the bottom of the barrel in that area. So like, despite the fact that like society might say, from a class perspective, you're here, it was like, but you're still Black, so like you're here. So I think on one hand, no, like from that perspective, from that experience, but that's also like many years ago. But I would say on another hand, absolutely yes, because even me, who's achieved more success as an artist, I'm allowed to be let in certain conversations and be in certain rooms. And I'm not even like financially successful to the degree of like a Dr. Dre, right?
Yeah.
But even I recognize that like my notoriety has opened up doors for me to say things I couldn't say 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I think it's definitely applies the more and more money you make. But I also think, you know, there's an idea of like, you make a lot of that money because you're sometimes a little bit more compliant or you're not as vocal about certain things. I think walls can be put up when you're too vocal, when you're too active in certain communities, and then that can stifle the amount of money you can make. So I think the answer is yes and no. It just depends on the entity, the person, you know, because it's like, to be a rich rapper, you'll be accepted in certain communities, but like certain conversations or discussions you won't be invited to, or you know what I mean? So it's like, it's interesting. It's interesting because it just, it's a systematic thing, right? And it's based on people's perception. And so some people's perception is you with money is acceptable, but for some people it's like, well, you still Black. I don't care what you have, because what if now it's a successful white person or a successful ignorant person who's like, but I still have more than you, so I don't see you like. It's almost like levels, you know, it's like levels to this. And like,
you're right. It's tricky and you really can't pinpoint what it is, what meets their level of standards. And if they're ignorant and racist, they're probably, won't care how much money you have.
Yeah. That's what I think for some people, it doesn't matter what you make. It doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter who you've influenced. It doesn't matter what your career is. You could have, you know, you could be a brain surgeon, you know, who saves people's lives. But my preconceived notion when I see you is, okay, what was your past like? What was your family life like? There's people that don't want a Black doctor. You'll be in the hospital and
That's crazy.
and they're like, I don't want this Black doctor, or I don't want this person of color doctor. Some people don't want Indian doctors. Like, some people just don't want to connect, right, where they feel like there's this unfamiliarity. So despite the work you've done to be the best at this thing that you do, or how much money you make doing that thing, you could still feel like you'll never fully fit in. And I think for myself, the answer is definitely yes and no, because I don't think that any amount of money will take away those kind of exclusions that I've felt my entire life. I don't think that me being rich is going to remove that completely. That being said, there's some rappers who talk about not believing in racism. Well, Wayne talked about racism not being real. So maybe if you're rich from the age of 14 in certain states, maybe you don't feel it, or maybe you don't understand what it means to feel it. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I don't believe that I'll ever not feel it, no matter how or what I achieve in my life. I just recognize that no one is gonna always like no amount of people are like, no one's ever gonna always know that I'm an artist. You know, I'm always gonna go places where you don't know who I am, and you're just gonna see a dark-skinned Black girl with dreads who maybe smells like a spliff. I don't know, right? And like, I just know what comes with that. I know what comes with that. Even in a country where this substance is legalized now, right? It doesn't matter. So yeah, I'd say yes and no. A long way to answer the question. Yes and no.
and well put. And it's a lot of dialogue for an important question that I think about from time to time, because you do want to see, you see what Boomer Esiason says when the protests are going on for a good cause. And by the way, there were white supremacists who were the ones that were starting those fires. It wasn't any of the Black Lives Matter protests. So he needs to turn off the Fox News, look up a different source, and actually do the research, and they'll see that it was white supremacists who infiltrated that. And, you know, he wouldn't even have a career if it wasn't for Black athletes, because who was he throwing to? Who were his teammates?
I think it's funny because I don't even know who you're talking about, but was it Twitter that he tweeted? Did he tweet
No,
this?
he said it on his radio show. I saw a clip because he works for WFAN. He's a Hall of Famer Bengals quarterback, but there's been a lot of disgraceful football players who have shown their true colors over the years, and he's one of them. And he said that, and I used to be a listener of the show, and I was done after that as soon as he said that, because now you've shown your true colors. Your principles don't align with mine. I can't listen to this. And this is the kind of society that's come together now. If you're aligning with that, I don't want anything to do with you. In America's, I think it's always been split. It's just that we never really talked about it and been so outspoken, which Trump has made it appropriate to be outspoken and speak, you know, about your white male fragility and all this stuff. So
that's
now
the only good thing I would say that came with the whole Trump thing is the evidence of what I've lived. I think that like Trump was evidence of my life's experiences, and him existing allowed, I think, certain conversations to happen, because he became the face of them, because he was instigating these conversations by kind of repeating those negative notions that a large majority of America has. And yeah, I would say that's the one good thing that came with him being in power, because we had this idea before that, you know, every president has our best interest at heart, and you know, people don't have biases that affect how we live, and that's just absolutely not true. So one good thing I think that came with it was the reality of what that country, I'm in Canada obviously, but just what the Western world is like. I think like he is what the Western world is like, literally him. Like there's just so many people that think like that, and not that the entire Western world is like that, but the ignorance that comes with the Western world, I think it's like he embodies like almost all of it. So in a way, I'm grateful, not for his existence because he sucks, but just the circumstances aligning in the way that they did, where we were able to kind of extract some BS from it and then work towards change. I mean, there's so much, we're going to be more antisocial, like the song says, and like the initial part of this interview we talked about. But with the way that we're utilizing social media now, we're at least having new conversations within our social constructs. And I think that that's been made, I guess, more of an option with the combination of Trump, the pandemic, so everyone's at home. Everybody has the time to see the same narratives, the same videos, the same pain, the same trauma, the same heartache. It's a little bit harder, I think, for people to argue that like there isn't transgenerational trauma for people of color, or that Indigenous people aren't treated disgustingly. You know, that's a big conversation in Canada, and I would love for that to become more of a conversation in the States. But I'm learning things too, you know, outside of things that impact my community, and even things that impact my community that haven't impacted me. I'm learning too. So I think that the LGBT community is speaking out more. I'm learning from that perspective too. I just think there's a lot more happening, and I think we need a moment to let those ignorant voices shine, so that the people that think that I don't have to deal with that, or you don't have to deal with that, or the people that, you know, are impoverished don't have to deal with that. There's evidence now that, well, clearly we do. Clearly we do. Like, you can go to a, you know, you could go to a store and be called all these heinous names and all this stuff. And it's just interesting because still there are ignorant people that doesn't matter what they see. It doesn't matter how much evidence they have. It's not going to change their mind. And I wouldn't invest time into trying to change ignorant people's minds. It's just kind of like the evidence is there, and then like you do with it what you will. But when you close your eyes at night and you go to sleep, like we both know what it is, you know. Like you can say what you want all day, but you and I, like when we're quiet in our dormitory and we're just in our own heads, we both know what it is. So it's like you just say whatever you want.
Yeah, we both know what it is. And as you mentioned, the Capitol incident that happened last week. How did you guys out in Toronto view that situation? Because me watching the television, I was like, all these other countries around us, they're viewing us as a joke. We're a joke.
There's an element of this is actually ridiculous. I think what was the most ridiculous about it though was, I mean, there was protests, as we talked about, happening in the Western world, the US and Canada. I was in some of these protests, just showing support for the initiatives and for my people. And I saw a lot of that happening in the States, and there was so much negative opinions of those protests. But I know every protest I went to was peaceful. And, you know, the worst that happened here was like paint being thrown in a statue or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But you have people like speaking out against these people, like look what they're doing, like this is so wrong, this is so terrible. And you have law enforcement like actively shutting this down. You have like Antifa like getting involved and stuff like that. But then with this situation, you have like this very seamless protest, like one of the biggest protests that breaks the most amount of rules, and it's like absolutely seamless. Law enforcement is letting people into the building that they're trespassing upon. It just it literally makes no sense. And I posted about it. I was thinking about my song AntiSocial, and I was like basically like watching the news. I mean, if these people that were breaching the Capitol look like me, like y'all know what I'm getting at. That was basically the post.
Yeah, we know what would have happened. I have talked about on my show plenty of times. There probably would have been casualties and sentences and everything. These people that the Proud Boys, as they call them, these racist white nationalists who went in there, they're not facing the repercussions that black people or any other color would have. They wouldn't have faced those same They wouldn't have faced those repercussions. They wouldn't have.
Not at all. And I think like the during and the aftermath, even the like the ability to kind of like put this together and come together in these numbers in a way where no one is infiltrating, and then it can go on for that many hours. And then the aftermath is no one's really getting penalized. It's not that big of a deal. It's crazy. Like you and I both know what it would be. And that was essentially the energy of my post. And then I said, I'm dropping a song, you know, today. And it speaks to how I feel about it. AntiSocial, you know, it doesn't speak specifically to it, but as we talked about at the beginning, like I just want to dissociate. But it was interesting, a guy came on my post and he was like, oh, like get over yourself. Not everything is about you. And I was like, protesters were being killed all summer and you know, traumatized all summer for fighting for their rights. It's never been about me, you know? And then it was like, well, a woman was shot and black BLM. Can I swear? No, I can't.
You can go ahead if you want.
As long as I just wanted to say what he said, but he said Black Lives Matter are pussies. The only reason that people are saying that this is different if they were black or white is because Black Lives Matter are pussies. They're too scared to like fight the facts. You are not going to come on my post and try to encourage black people to fight law enforcement physically, because you would be the same person to say, well, this is what they do. That's look how wrong they are. Like you can't bring this double narrative shit to me.
Yeah, you can't do
on
that.
my page. You know what I'm saying? And try to defend something. Like, I don't care if you follow me. I don't care what song you like, block. Like, you're gone. Like, I don't have time for the bullshit. And I didn't post that to like, I was really ready to actually have a conversation. So I was like, dude, it's never been about me. It's about these protesters. And then like this idea that we're going to paint this narrative that Black Lives Matter is this and we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like, we can see the stark differences between the largeness of this crowd and the pigmentation of this crowd. We can see that they were able to get away with a bit more of their own initiative, which is it's ridiculous in comparison to fighting for your human rights. What are you fighting for?
Yeah.
exactly are you fighting for? Like, so yeah, I think is a number of thoughts that I had about that. I think a lot of Canadians think the same thing that I think. It's crazy. America's nuts. And that
Yeah.
was and yeah, I mean, I guess Trump is being impeached twice now, is what I read.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to remove him from office. They're not going to bring it to the House, which is disappointing because people died last week. There's still threats, security threats, in which at the inauguration next week, there's supposedly going to be the same people there protesting, and they said they're coming armed. So
Wow. So
it's really unbelievable. Like, I guess America really is a free country only for those people, though. Only for them. The fact that they're saying that they're coming armed, that's unbelievable.
Hold on. So the regular civilians said they're coming armed.
Yeah, the people that were the Proud Boys and the Nationalists that were invading the Capitol apparently going to come and protest the inauguration. People on Twitter were saying that, oh, we're going to come armed this time.
I feel two ways about it. On one side, it's like, man, like, I don't want people to get hurt. I don't want people's country to be destroyed. But on the other hand, it's like, this is there's an idea of what Black people are like in this country, and it's literally that. The people that can't follow the rules, the people that think that they're the victims all the time, and then they think they can just take control. That's the idea of what people like me that look like me. People think that's who we are and that's what we do. So when it's not my crowd, I'm like, you know what, go ahead. Because the narrative needs to be adjusted to what the world is actually like. There's just people out here doing different things. Let's not paint the idea that all of one type of person is like this or like that. So while I hope people aren't harmed in this process, I would love to see what happens. I would love to see how these people aim to fight for their liberations and rights in America.
Yeah. It's going to be insane. Next week is going to be insane. It's definitely a difficult time in this country right now. I hope everything goes smooth. Do I think it's going to go smooth? No, but I hope things get better 100%. And to more about the topic and police brutality. What is police brutality like in Toronto? Racism is everywhere, but how bad is it in Toronto?
I don't know if I'm the best spokesperson to speak to it. It exists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's as loud as it is in the States, especially depending on the state. But it definitely exists. But I mean, I'm not in the areas that are as densely enforced and policed. So it's tough to say like what type of, like, I'm in a decent area where, I'm not getting stopped and my rights being infringed on a daily basis. But there are areas in Toronto where I'm sure that's happening because of the housing environment. So you have like more people that are just living in impoverishment, living in like lower means, lower resources. You have more gang activity. You have more hood dudes. You have just you have less resources, like even in terms of recreation. Mm-hmm. So you just have more people that are out. You have more homelessness in certain areas. So I feel like you'll see a lot of like police activity in areas where there's higher homelessness. And you'll see more policing in those areas. There have definitely been like a couple like killings this or last year, like over like house calls, like mental health calls, where the person was killed by the police. That has happened in the States and in Canada. I would definitely say like just the same way that when you go to a store, the store clerk might have preconceived notions. Like when you deal with a cop, like I'm assuming that too. So, I mean, for me, I'm just like, I deal with authority the way I deal with my parents. Like, you're just not going to get me caught up in this system. Yeah. I was trained well. So, I just can't get caught up in it. So my personal experience is I'm lucky enough to never been dragged out of a car or, physically abused in that way, maybe only like mentally or kind of like sarcastically or passive aggressively. But it definitely exists. And I think you definitely still have to be careful in this country with like when you're dealing with law enforcement. And I think the area really matters as well, which I'm sure is the same in the States too. Yeah.
It's just more present in the States and more obvious. And I think the KKK infiltrated the police. I really do, because they don't want to wear the sheets anymore. So even KRS-One said that, like with Sound of the Police. If you listen to what he's saying in the song, overseers and officers, there you have it.
Same people.
Yeah.
Same people. I mean, the idea of policing comes from slave watchers, regular white people that looked out for the masters who owned these slaves, and they were as poor as and as nothing as those black people. But they, again, the hierarchy that we
Yeah.
talked about, they could still oversee and be those overseers. And the idea of policing, I think, comes from that. So I think, the sound of the police speaks to that really well. But like even before that, before we even knew what it was, it's been that. So yeah, the whole concept, and then this whole year, I mean, in Toronto, there's been a lot of petitioning, protesting, which was largely focused on, like, first of all, put on by abolitionists and fighting for the abolition of police and removing those entities, or changing the way that they look, at least having like people of color or people that are in mental health sectors kind of taking over certain roles where police are clearly not equipped to like de-escalate, because there's like a couple incidents that happened where it's like the cops were physically pinning black people that were part of a protest to the ground as opposed to de-escalating. And then it's like, well, we're petitioning for the people that are in mental health facilities and people that are focusing on those things, for them to be involved in maybe the policing so that we can, and it was like, no, we're going to increase the police budget. We're going to have this Toronto Council meeting. We're going to deny your claims. We're going to increase the police budget, and we're going to involve no one else but those police. It's just, so they're not listening, right? And like, those are the things we've been fighting for all summer. And instead they've implemented like automated speed cameras that will catch you speeding while you're supposed to be inside. It makes no sense. Like,
it doesn't.
Where your resources are going, it doesn't make no sense. There's been no decline of how much, the police academy is making. We had the police official step down, Mark Saunders, and somebody else is going to step in and it's going to be the same shit,
Yeah.
So I mean, you have to keep fighting for what you can't quite envision yet, and you just have to keep fighting for like what you want to see, even if you can't see it yet. But yeah, I think like it looks a little different, but I think the people that are on the good side of the fence are fighting for the same thing, whether they're Canadian or American.
Yeah, I agree. It's there, but America, it's just so worse out here right now. Who would you say was the most important artist that spoke out about issues with the government and even the United States, which may relate to other places around the world, including Canada? That's done it. You got KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions, Public Enemy, NWA, and you're following the trend now. Who would you say was the most important that really put that kind of hip hop on the map and basically paved the way for others to do it?
I mean, I feel like the biggest name that I can think to with regard to like political duress within their lyrics, the biggest artist would be Tupac, right? That's
Tupac,
what I think, right? Just because he was able to transcend to like a market that wasn't maybe as invested. Like somebody that knows some Tupac records might not really know Public Enemy records. They might, but you know what I'm saying? Just like kind of that mainstream. So I would just say from a mainstream perspective, he was able to bring certain concepts to the mainstream at a time when that wasn't happening. In a way where I think other artists weren't able to do it the same way, because I was born in the 90s and I grew up in a household with 3 older sisters and mom and dad who were like, you're not listening to hip hop. Like, not because but like just you're a young child. We live in a racist area. Like, it just wasn't the thing to put on TV at that time. Like, I would have been. So I think for me, my exposure was even a little bit late. But when I look at the 90s versus the 80s, the content changed, right? It got different. And so it's like, for me, I would even have to backdate to like really listen to more music to like understand who was really, really, really kind of breaking down those barriers back then. But a lot of like KRS, 100%. I would just say probably the biggest artist that I could think of right now that was doing that, because Biggie and Tupac are like the biggest artists, that you can think of. But I feel like Biggie was coming from a little bit of a different angle, and Tupac, his angle was more political. And that was, I think, a little bit more normalized through an artist like him, who was so respected and recognized and seen as one of the top 2 rappers ever, kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say he definitely pushed the envelope just with regard to being proud and Black too. That idea was once just an idea, and it's still something that I put in my music, because I think a lot of people act like they really live that, but deep down inside, they're not proud. They say they're proud, but what they're proud of is the association with the culture or the aspect of what's cool about it, or, but not actually being proud to be Black. Because if you're proud to be Black, you would look into your history and come to the understanding of what your people have gone through, so you can be proud of your setbacks and proud of what you had before it was all taken away. That's another thing. Like, we don't even know what we had before was taken away. We learn about our history with, okay, so you guys were enslaved and then you lost everything. And then it starts there. Like, that's what we know. So we have to do the research to be proud of ourselves. We can't, it's hard to be proud of your lineage when the first thing you hear is that you were enslaved, and you're looking at your ancestors like, well, what was wrong with y'all? How could y'all, you're not recognizing what you had before that was poached from your people. You're not recognizing the reason that they were targeted because of the value that they brought, because of the fact that they were, these people, which were my people, were so willing to teach other regions, other cultures, to share that knowledge, to travel and spread that. And for some people it was like, okay, we need to reap the benefits of this solely. So instead of sharing this, we need to take this. I think it's hard for Black people to be proud of themselves when they don't know that, So that's why, I wrote 13. I try to talk about what it was before. It's what we know. And yeah, I just think it's so important to like really find a place to find that pride. I say it's the same thing with women empowerment. You got to find that pride. It's the same thing with anything that could be a setback for you. You have to find pride in it.
You do.
You really do. You really do.
You really do. 13 is a very important track. Make sure you go check that out on all platforms. I want to just head this interview into a lighter note. We talked about a lot of serious things. Just growing up in Toronto, and who are your major music influences? Because which was funny, you mentioned before that you weren't really allowed to listen to hip hop. Like you said, it wasn't a good idea for you to turn on the TV to listen to hip hop.
I would say that was probably the idea of like my Jamaican father. It was like, I'm not, because at that time, remember, it's the 90s, so you got all the booty shaking, and then you have daughters, and then they're in an environment where everybody sees them as an N-word. Like, it was just a very delicate thing. So I think just turning on BT just wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
But my cousin, I was put on to hip hop through my cousin, and he would bring a CD player over and stuff, and that's how I kind of found my like first hip hop when I was like 7 and 8 and stuff like that. But my exposure was a bit limited, definitely. And I also grew up in singing lessons, right? So I was like singing Disney and Broadway, and I was on the complete opposite side of the fence. So my influences in the beginning were really, really, really eclectic, because my mom is from Barbados, but born in the UK.
Yep.
So her palette is, the UK palette is really, really vast, I find. So, you're listening to Celine Dion, but you're listening to Whitney Houston too, but you're also listening to like my mom's favorite culture, reggae, but then my dad's listening to Buju Banton, Bob Marley, Capleton, so now I'm listening to that stuff too. But then through my sisters and parents, I'm finding Lauryn Hill. So I say Lauryn Hill was a big influence for me as like a mainstream artist who's like a rapper and a singer and a guitarist, all things that I tap into, and just kind of like this multi-visionary, the Fugees, their association, Wyclef, very into that too. But my inspiration was really vast, because while it was like a lot of singers, like I would say it was more singers than rappers in the beginning, like the people I just named, but then there was a lot of reggae, right? But then I also grew up, all my sisters played the piano. We all had piano lessons. So I grew up inspired by classical music. So you'll hear in my music, there's a lot of like cinematic sounding stuff. The way that I produce sometimes has elements that you might feel is in a movie, or like I'm very like into like darker chord progressions. I like things to feel big. I like my strings. Like that comes from, I think, growing up in like singing lessons, but my sisters playing the piano and like getting attributed to the sound of like Beethoven, Mozart, like that sort of thing, which is, I think, different for a rapper, right? But then I think I really started finding rap around 7, 8 and post. When I was old enough, I know how to use a computer now. I can like listen to the radio, record on my tapes. So now I'm finding stuff myself. But like my biggest inspiration that I could look back to as a rapper is 50 Cent.
Oh, wow. That's home right now, Queens. Yeah. So people listening, they like that one.
Yeah, that for me was like, I think he taught me a lot about understanding, first of all, that I want to be an artist, understanding like how impactful your storytelling has to be, even if the person that's listening has not experienced what you've gone through. If you could tell that story well enough, they'll resonate, because I've never been shot. And I knew every word on every song on like the album, Get Rich or Die Trying. Like that, my ability to rap along with that, like I was impressing myself, like just to rap along with him. And like I had all the ad-libs down. And so like, just even like the music videos were really impactful. He had so many different vibes, from like In the Club to 21 Questions to PIMP, like completely different pockets. And then he had like the M cosign, and then he's co-signing M, and then Drake. So it was it was so hip hop. And then like, you know, I feel as a rapper, like people like to attribute me to like more maybe like the New York flow as opposed to like West Coast, just because
Yeah.
of my lyricalness. And so I think I resonated with that too, just like how to tell a story like that kind of, it got into like the way that I flow, and, you know, being able to kind of like be a little bit quicker with it, focusing maybe less on like the dances that come with it and more about
Yeah.
the impact of the story. Like that's what resonated with me. So it's interesting because there's so many influences and inspirations growing up, but I'd say like my biggest inspiration was that era, right? Like the Nelly, Dipset, Ludacris
Oh yeah.
era. Like that's when I really started finding it, and that's way late in the game. You know, for some people, like they're like, damn, I don't know what she's talking about. But then for some people, it's like, you're a child, right? So it's interesting how the eras shift, but yeah, like Ludacris and that quirky flow. Like I just like that. There's something about the 2005.
Yeah, 2005 was a great era. People don't know. People may clown that era, but that, trust me, if someone that's analyzed the 80s, 90s, and some of the nonsense that we have now with this mumble rap that we call it, trust me, 2005 was a great era.
It was great. Like, first of all, you had like Chingy. Yeah,
Yep.
Shane was right there, and then he collaborated with Snoop Dogg while Holiday Inn. Those were vibes. The melody, the melodicness of music back then, the production was different. Yeah, it didn't hit the same. The bass wasn't, it didn't punch you in the chest the same. I'll be honest. And I do like elements of track production. I do. But there was something about that era where you could be quirky, funny, kind of be a little like, I don't know, things that might be corny now, you could get away with in that era. You could collaborate with different people. You could take different types of risks.
Yeah.
And I feel like hip hop was more eclectic then. Like the sound was more vast. And now when you listen to playlists, it's a tighter a pocket of the types of sounds you'll get. A lot of things sound very trappy. Even with myself, I try when I do tap into tracks to do it in a little bit of a different
In
way.
your way.
Yeah, because it's like I really do appreciate it, but at the same time, I don't want it to sound like everyone else's records, because once you know how to make trap, like it's simple. Like
Yeah.
it took me a minute, but now that I know how, it's pretty simple, and a lot of the songs can kind of get that same feel. So how do you create new feeling when you're using these same elements? And 808 really only feels like in your chest.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel like anything else. So just trying to find ways to marry that. I go back to my roots of being mostly inspired from that era, and like that. Yeah, it's interesting because I have to do so much research when it comes to like the 80s and 90s to really have like this fleshed out conversation. But when it comes to 2000s, like I can just speak about it from memory, because that's when I was old enough to like really kind of take in what was happening as I was developing. And I just, you know, I'm really grateful for the shift in the eras even now, because people now, the listeners now, don't know what it was like then. So it's like if I can bring a little, people tell me that my rapping sounds old school.
Yeah. And that's a good thing.
To me, huh?
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. They'll tell me my flow's a little bit old school, but then I feel like my sound isn't old school. Like my production isn't old school. My drum use, my sample game isn't old school. So it's interesting because I feel like that's this amazing way to bridge these worlds where you're bringing in a flow that's a bit maybe dated, if you will. But to me, the new flow is super, super, super simple. And, you know, when you have an album where it's like 16 simple songs, you're like, okay. Like I like simple music, but, you know, I like that variety. And I feel like right now it's almost difficult to get the same listenership on that more intricate song. Like the listeners don't want it. So I feel like we have to train the listeners to like recognize that there's different sounds out there that they don't even know that they want, you know?
Yeah. I think more people are looking for storytelling raps, especially now that we're going through a pandemic and we can't all relate to popping pills and dancing around all the time anymore. So now we got to hear something that relates to us, and listening to a record like Tupacalypse. That was an amazing record.
By who?
By Tupac. Tupacalypse. He had Brenda's Got a Baby on there. He had a couple good ones on there. And that's an important record, storytelling record. And I know back in the day when Tupac was on, what was it, Interscope, they didn't even want him to drop that record because it spoke on so much realness and what was going on in the country and in the neighborhoods. And thank God it did.
It's funny how like you could go back to some of that stuff now.
Yeah.
And not even realize what you were receiving then, because the climate just wouldn't, you would never like kind of broadcast certain elements of certain things. Yeah, that's really interesting. I gotta go refresh on that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Brenda's Got a Baby, Tupacalypse. That album was That's a great album by Tupac. It's not mentioned enough. It's always All Eyes on Me or Me Against the World. His older albums were just as good, in my opinion.
Yeah. And this is the thing, right? The older albums were the ones that were like 80s.
Yeah.
Like mid to late 80s. So I have to go back, like I've been saying before, but I can only imagine, because I know some of the content got, a little bit different.
Yeah.
Kind of like the early 90s and stuff like that. But I can only imagine what that difference is. And I actually can't wait to do a little bit of that research on my own just to see what those shifts were, because you have to shift with the times.
Yeah.
I'm sure the more notoriety he got, he had to make adjustments. He probably couldn't even get the okay on certain things that he could get, that he had to fight for on like records like Tupacalypse. So it's very interesting.
It is very interesting. It really is. I know you were in a group, Sorority. I heard about it. How did that come together, and what did you learn out of it that helped you become a solo artist and develop your own craft?
The Sorority, that was a dope run. We were together for just over 3 years. That happened because that was, I would say, the turning point of my career. I was invited to be a part of a cypher. I'd been putting out music for a while. Some people had heard of me, but I went to school for 2 years and left and came back. And so it was just like, okay, she was on World Star once and she got some followers and she won this little Chris Brown contest, but there was like not a lot of things that were like happening, right? And then I got invited to be a part of this cypher. And I did this cypher. I didn't know who was going to be a part of it. I didn't know the producer. I just got this beat and it was like, this is the day. And I prepped my ting and I showed up and we cut it that day. And I just remember feeling like, I smashed that. I remember feeling like, I did really good. And I didn't have a lot of things that I had done where I was like on camera and it was like not my own initiative. So it was cool to kind of do this thing that was not my thing. It was very DIY at that time. Yeah. And I had very limited resources at that time. But this cypher was, there was a site called Team Backpack, a company called Team Backpack.
You used to do the freestyles online through the computer.
Yeah. And they were big at that time. This was 2016. Yeah. And the cypher was for Team Backpack. So that's what was like big about it. But I didn't really know how big the platform was. Anyway, I felt I smashed the video and they were like, yeah, it's going to come out in like a month or two. And I was like, all right. And when it dropped, it just went viral immediately. I just couldn't, like it dropped on Facebook and Team Backpack posted it. And we didn't make any money. But I just remember there being like a hyper focus on like my verse. And I remember getting like 1 million views in 3 days on my verse. And then it like in a month, like 2 million views. That was life-changing for me because the comments validated me and my greatness that I knew I had, but like deep down I was like, but maybe not. Yeah. And these people were like, no, she's dope. I started getting recognized on the street. I got recognized at the bank. I got invited to New York to do a live cypher with one of the other girls that was in that cypher. And then there was a male cypher too from Toronto that Team Backpack did. So they got like the top 2 dudes from that. And so I came to New York and I actually like did a rap live. I remember I was like, we got to stay in this house and Twista was in my house. Like it was really cool. It was like life-changing to see that like your abilities, if you can get the right audience, the right time, the right bars, the right beat, that people will resonate with what you do. And that changed my whole scope. And so I was like, all right, I'm not a battle rapper. I don't want people to like, I got invited to do like 8 cyphers that year. I was like, I can't keep doing these cyphers. So I was like, let me shift the topic of conversation to like the fact that I want to build projects. I had already put out 4 projects that no one heard of. I didn't know how to monetize. So at this point, I started getting my business together because it was just so much attention, so many emails, so many people trying to reach out that I was like, wow, this is a real thing. So I started going to mentorship cafes. I started applying for grants. I started doing all the business stuff I never did. And one of the big parts of that was putting out an album. And it was my 5th album, but it's probably the first album that anyone's ever heard from me. And that album, it was a combination of, I put that album out, but also while I was working on that album, people were like, we like these girls. We want to like, we want to see these girls. So me and those 3 girls that were in a sorority, well, we weren't in a group yet. Yeah. We did a couple of performances throughout the year in 2016. The same time I'm working on my solo album, right? Yeah. Right before I put out my solo album, we decided to be a crew. So now I joined the crew. I put out my solo album in 2017. I put out an album with the crew in 2018. And then I put out another solo record in 2019. And it was just a wrap. It was just a wrap from that point, like at least to be where I am at this point. And it was amazing for me to like collectively learn about my solo career while learning what it's like to be in a dynamic with 3 other women. eventually went down to 2 other women, but like what that dynamic would be like, and touring with them, we're like touring across Canada, and I just put out this record of mine, so I'm learning my mistakes while I'm doing this album with them, and then I'm learning those mistakes, and then I'm applying it to the next. So it was really cool. It was probably the busiest time of my life. You know, I had a full-time job, and then I was a solo artist, and then I was also in this group. So it was a lot of balancing and prioritizing, and it was really difficult, and it was really overwhelming, but I was able to prove to myself like my capabilities, my work ethic got stronger through that, and all the goals that I set through joining the group as well as being a solo artist came true, because I wanted to make sure that people weren't looking at me like I'm just some battle rapper and I'm just freestyling all these beats. I'm like, I'm a curator. I curate ideas and audible vision. That's what I want to do. I don't want to be just off the cuff, because I'm not King Los. I'm not, you know, the person that's going to be the best. I'm just not going to be the best at it. And I'm not going to make a career off of something that I don't think I'm the best at. And I think I'm the best at what I do. And so I feel like I've changed the narrative in that time to like, people are like, she has bars, but they still look at me as an artist, not a rapper. And I just didn't want, I'm also a singer, you know?
Yeah.
So I was worried that I was going to get restricted and I wouldn't be able to do all those other things that I can do and that I enjoy doing. And I remember working with people telling me, yo, you can kind of sing, but rapping is your bag. Like, don't sing. It's not going to get you anywhere. Like, so I was really fighting like the ideas that people had told me, like, can I really do these things? And all I did was try, you know? And yeah, I would say that the sorority was a cool part of that journey. We did it for as long as we could. The balance beam became too much. And honestly, we it worked out because the pandemic hit like 4 months after our last show. So it wouldn't have worked out anyway if we tried to keep pushing, because the inability to get together and create content, it would have been impossible. It's almost impossible to do stuff as solo artists, which we all are too. So yeah, it was, but what I learned in that time frame was like, yeah, like it's different being in a group, you know? You can't write a song just from your mind, and it can't just be your idea. You got to compromise in different ways. And there are things I liked about it, like being on stage. You got to take breaks. You got to like big somebody else up. You got to change your outfit. You got to do like different things on stage. Like I get more winded by myself, but then there's other things, like I felt more rewarded as a solo artist if I got something done on my own, or if I got through a 45-minute set and it's like all my songs, like because I had to write them all and they came out of my head. I feel more rewarded at the end of it. Like, wow, that was more difficult than, you know, like, but sharing something with someone, it doesn't mean it's less impactful, you know what I mean? But it's just different. And I think that I learned how to songwrite from different people's perspectives. I learned how to like kill the ego a little bit. There were hooks that I wrote that I'm like, listen, I don't think I'm the best person to sing it, but I think this is the hook. And I had to recognize that, oh, this person sings it better than me because I'm in a group, and like we want the song to be the best for the group. So yeah, I just feel like there are certain things that I learned from that I'll always take with me. And, you know, I'm still really good friends with 2 of the girls from the group. But yeah, it was just so much to learn in such a short period of time.
Yeah. But what's important is that you learned how to work in a group, work with others, and it was a collaborative effort. That's the main thing. You took something away from it that helped you out with your own career. Definitely.
Yeah. And like, I would say it all came from that cypher, man. Just the people wanting us to be a group came off of the strength of the cypher. But even me recognizing that I need to put out a project, that came from the strength of the cypher. And that project, the whole idea of that project was I need a booking agent. I need a manager. Because now I'm hearing these buzzwords and I'm like, oh, so that's what I need. I don't actually need the little guy first. Like, yeah, try, but you need the people that can open. And so that's what that album was. I'm like, how do I get people to know that I'm serious? How do I, you know? And it's so cool that like through the group, I was able to do that in a way, but also through putting out a project off of the strength of people just recognizing me and being like, she's good. That's all I needed to hear was she's good. One of the biggest things I say now to this day is don't wait for the validation. I had a whole year of validation that like I needed before I could tell myself I was good enough. But the talent had been, you know, I've been working on it and fleshing it out since 2009. If you backdate, there's lots of stuff online. Actually, don't look it up. But there's lots of stuff online that like my lyricalness, I was building it that whole time. And I just think it's so interesting how like believing in yourself was the last step. Like if you don't believe in yourself, you could think you believe in yourself because you make songs or because you're willing to do the show. But when you don't invite your family and friends, or you don't do any research to try to monetize it, or you don't use the money from your job to like pay for resources to like make your sound like, if you're not doing that stuff, I find it hard to believe that you really believe in yourself, because I know for me there was a hard line of like, I half believed in myself, and then I needed a bunch of people to tell me that they also thought I was good for me to be like, oh, and then put everything together. You know what I mean? Like, why did I need that? One of the biggest things I say is like, don't wait for that, because you don't actually need it. I didn't make no money off that cipher. None of us did. Like, I got one opportunity off of it, but it really just showed me that you can get opportunities through music. And I've had instances before that where I was shown that. You know what I mean? So why did I need more and more things to believe in myself? So yeah, like, it's just, for me, like, your mental is the biggest thing. That's the thing that drives you more than anything else. And being in the group taught me that. Like, being a solo artist or being in the group, doesn't matter how you do it. Your mental is what carries you. Like, why you wake up to get to the gig, why you believe in what you do, why you post about like, I hope it posted, but like, I rushed to post a thing saying I'm going live with you on my IG, and then right before I came on, I saw it didn't post, it just deleted. And then I tried to do it again. I hope it posted, but it's like that. I would never do that before. It's like, well, if people tune in, then I guess they'll enjoy it, but I don't want to make people feel obligated. Now it's like, no. I want as many people that could possibly join in to know that this is happening, because I believe that what I have to say and what you have to say is going to be impactful and enjoyable for those people. And that all comes down to like, what is it worth? Like, why do you deserve these people's attention? Why do you deserve to be on the stage? You have to believe that you deserve the space that you want to take up. I say that a lot. If you're taking up space, but you don't believe you deserve to take up the space, then you're going to be on stage like this, all small and shit. And that's how I used to perform, like, very like, okay, and the bars would be good, but my energy was like, don't listen to me. It's like, why are you doing that? Right? So yeah, it's just so much mental breaking of the chains, and I think a lot of that comes from, what we talked about earlier, the heavier topics, being a Black woman that isn't isn't these ideal beauty, I know that. And so like, me occupying space as a woman who like does all these things that men don't want women to do, or other women don't even want other women to do, it's just like, why would they listen to me? I needed people to tell me, I like this, I like you. And then I was like, oh, I got you. Like, and that's why a lot of my music is the way that it is, because it took me so long to just believe, that I deserve this much of the attention I'm getting,
Yeah. And even more than that, because of the artistry that you have, and your messages and your music are important, and they really do share a purpose with a lot of people, and it speaks to a lot of people, and people can learn from it. And that's why your music is so important to not only just Black people, but everyone, because everyone can learn from it.
Absolutely.
It's not just one race, it's multiple, and that's something that can change the world, and hopefully it changes the way music is made. That's what I'm hoping. All these artists out here that are getting their shine in 2021 and even in 2020 that actually have a story to tell, that's the music I want back into the mainstream light again. Something that I can enjoy and get something from it.
Absolutely. I agree. I hope I can contribute in some way. One of the biggest focuses for these next run of records that I've just started to put out, and I have a lot more to come, was to try to improve on the songwriting and the storytelling. What else can you do? I'm not traveling. I'm not getting new perspectives. So how can I tell stories that I already know, or ideas that I'm discovering in a pandemic, in a way where I'm being even more impactful than the last record? And I think it's so important to like work towards that, because that's what grabbed me. That's what I gravitated towards when I started listening to hip hop, the ability for a story or an idea or a concept that I haven't lived to like hit me in my chest, hit me in my soul, and like me know what it feels like to go through that or resonate with those experiences. So yeah, just trying to tell my stories and the stories of my counterparts as best as I can.
You were also the first to win, I believe it's the Polaris Award. Is that right? In Canada?
Yeah.
The first rapper, the first Black female rapper as well. Yeah.
That was a big feat. I would say that was a big thing. And it also, I would say that was one of the biggest things that solidified me as an artist in this country, because I was recognized for my album that was based on artistic merit alone. And it was, you know, compared to beautiful albums of that year of 2019. Jessie Reyez had an incredible album that was nominated. Snotty Nose Rez Kids. There were a lot of other artists that, you know, Shad, great artists with great work. And so for me to be recognized, first of all, amongst that caliber of artists, but then to also win that award was like, okay, she's an artist. And I got gigs off of the strength of that. Companies that reached out like, okay, you know, they probably want to tap into a little bit more of an urban field. And they're like, well, how do we know that we're going to get someone that can do it? And so I become that face a little bit, right? There's a catch-22, there's tokenism that comes with that. But at the same time, when you get an opportunity to like take up space and show people that not only do you deserve to take up that space, but you can change the narrative within the space. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be a positive representation of what Black women have to offer. I know I have to offer a whole lot, and I know so many Black women have to offer even a whole lot more than me. And so when I take up space, I just make sure I come with it every time. When I performed at the Polaris, although it's not big, like your performance does not help you get the win, but I came with it on that performance because I'm like, whether or not I win this award, this room is full of industry executives in this country, and I want them all to know that I'm the best. I'm the best. And it just changed a lot for me, like even with the ability to get booked for certain bigger festivals, the guarantees for shows. Like I don't get booked for under a certain amount now. Before that, it was like, if I got $500, I was happy. And now it's like thousands of dollars for one gig. It's like just a different world completely. I was able to like kind of solidify the fact that I have a career in this and that I don't have to go back to working in music retail as I have for the past 3 years, or Burger King, or, you know, Bulk Barn, or any of these places I work, Starbucks. I don't have to go back to that. I can continue to do this because I've created enough of a foundation that I'm making real money off of this. And that money that I made off of the Polaris win, they give you 50K, but also the investment that I made afterwards, all of the shows that I played, all the money I made off those shows went right back into this music that I made now in a pandemic when I don't have any touring money being generated coming in. I was able to still have a healthy bank account where I could pay, and I'm very prideful to be able to pay for all of the work that I get. So I'm paying for my producers. I'm paying what they want. I'm not calling in favors. I'm paying for music videos. I got these budgets, and that comes from just the ability to like get a win and then invest on your win. You know, I don't have no big chains yet, not one. And I'll eventually get it. I need a new car. I'm saving up for my home, but the investment first has to be in making this craft be the best it can be, because I thoroughly believe in my heart that if I stopped making music today, that I would be no one, and it would go away in less than a year. It would, like, I haven't done enough work to feel like I'm comfortable in anything. I don't believe. So I think that the Polaris Music Prize, being the first Black woman to win, and the first Black album, the first hip hop album to win, are all really good foundations for like starting a really prosperous career. But it's just the start, you know? I have so much more work to do. I have so much more accolades to achieve. I have so much more money to make. I have so much more fans to reach. But I'm really grateful that happened, because it at least helped to solidify the narrative that I want, which is that I'm an artist, not even just like a rapper, not even just somebody with bars, but an artist. I curate, I produce, I engineer. Like I record my own vocals, you know what I'm saying? So like, it's like, I'm not just someone hopping in the booth, and I want people to know that when they listen to everything that I make. So I feel like I'm at least, you know, in that place where people have an idea of what they're getting and what they're dealing with.
Yeah. And that's important. You could tell by your music background that you know what you're doing, especially when you're producing, and you can hear it on the album 13th Floor. You can hear it on there. You can hear it on the new song AntiSocial and everything else that you're working on. What are some of your top goals for 2021? Because 2020, there were barely any performances. You were doing a lot in the beginning of the year, but then the pandemic hit and shut everything down, unfortunately. But what are your top goals for 2021, despite the pandemic? Because I think we've all learned how to work in a way we can still achieve something and attain something despite being in a pandemic.
Yeah, I say my top goals are, I say I have two goals, because some of the gigs that I got this year has been really interesting, because I've done a lot of like back end stuff, like for corporate. That's not like me as the artist. Like I'm not putting it out as myself, but I was able to like get that corporate bag on the back end because of, I guess I proved myself in 2019. So now companies are like, well, what can we do in 2020 that doesn't look the same as 2019? So I did a lot of like narrating stuff and like voiceover stuff, reading scripts for like digital award shows that can't be happening in person. I started doing a lot of those. People were reaching out. And then it moved to kind of like, I know DoorDash did a they did like a commercial, a campaign, and I was the voice of that.
Yeah, and it was on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep.
Yeah, and that's very different. Like I'm like singing this cover song and like for this major company, and I gotta listen to the client. Like I really gotta follow what the client wants, but I also have to make sure that it sounds like me and I'm okay with it representing me,
Yeah.
and it's going out the facet. And now I'm working on two things I can't mention, but like one is a TV show in Canada, and I'm producing for the TV show. So like
Oh,
that's
wow.
just a different bag altogether. I'm not the only producer, but I'm contributing to the production on the show, like just beats. It's like I'm like literally producing to script. That's so different.
And what show is this called? So people could check this out.
It's not out yet.
Okay.
I probably can't say yet, but
Okay.
I'll follow up with you. For sure.
Yeah,
it's
for
not
sure.
out yet, but I think it's going to be on HBO Max.
Okay.
So I think that I don't know if Americans will be able to access it that way. I think they might,
Yeah.
but it is a Canadian show.
Okay.
But it's not anywhere near done yet, so I don't want to shoot myself in the foot and get in trouble.
Yeah.
But that is, I produced for half of the first season already.
That's great.
I think we're hopping back into that, you know. And I also did a thing with I can't say the company, but a very big company, actually, a very big fashion company, and I'm producing.
Is it Reebok?
Huh?
Is it Reebok?
No.
Because I've heard in other interviews you talk about Reebok.
Really?
Yeah, I think I have.
Bro, I don't know too much about Reebok, but they blessed me some free shoes. That might have been what
That's
I said.
it. That's what I've heard in one of your interviews. Yeah.
They gave me the i3s, and they gave me another pair of kicks that I haven't even bust out yet because where am I going? But yeah, no, it's another big company, not just a shoe company, but I can't say, but I'm producing again, but like it's so cool because it's like there's a singer and she's the artist, and then I'm the producer, but like I'm usually the singer. So I like was just in the studio two days ago, like recording the vocals and like really knocking it out, and that's gonna drop in March. So that's really exciting because it's just back end stuff. Like it's not what people expect from me, and I think people see me as a rapper, and now they kind of like, oh, she sings. People might just see me DJ, but like they don't really know the production stilo like that. So this is putting me in a whole different bag. I've gotten so much better at production through the pandemic, just being at home, that like I can do these gigs now, and I'm like executing them, and I'm doing a good job. And so one of my goals is to continue to like focus on the back end and be like a really good shadow assister. You know, I like to work in the back end too. I went to school for music. I took singing lessons. Like I know a lot of things. Like I worked in music retail for almost 4 years. I troubleshooted like live gear. I was the rental person. I was the PA person. I was the lighting person. So I can tap into a lot of different bags musically. And sometimes you can't do that as the artist, but you can do it for other people when you get hired in. So that's one goal for the year. But my main goal for the year, I'm just talking so much. My main goal for the year is I'm releasing music in a different way this year than I ever have before. And I've only ever worked with a team on one project, and that was 13th Floor. But that was an album. Of course, it all kind of came out at one time. I put out 4 songs as singles with videos, and then I dropped the album, and then that was it. And then I just worked the album. But this is more like song. And it's like, they're not curated to like talk to each other. They're curated as like an inner pandemic monologue. Like these are my thoughts in 2020. And I created every song to be single, strong enough to be single in my opinion, strong enough to have a video in my opinion. They won't all have a video because pandemic, but strong enough that they could, strong enough that the songwriting speaks for itself from top to bottom of the song. You don't need an album or other songs before it or after it for it to feel full or for it to feel fleshed out. The idea was to show that I can create amazing songs. That's it. And that's why my songwriting I really focused on that. And I have a whole bunch of songs to continue to come out. I have a strategic rollout with what songs will fit the feeling of what season. And we can adjust as we go. AntiSocial is the third one. And I'll have more to say about the body of work that it will be soon. But I just want to start with the music, because a part of the rollout is letting how people receive the singles dictate where this body of work will go as well. So it's really exciting because I get to put out a song and then see how the song does. And then I can put out another song and be like, okay, this one did better. And I can see the differences and why. I've never been able to do that. I feel like the ability to like access stats and data this year is my main goal, because I'm going to understand my audience, understand my brand better, understand what works for me as an artist, understand what doesn't work, and feel more empowered when I do that next project, hopefully in 2022. And I I just think it's a really, really good way to like test out the waters because you get to just watch digital numbers. People are not really outside, and you know your competitor is doing the same thing. You don't really, so it's just a really interesting time. And I just think it's going to create a lot of growth for me mentally. I'm going to be able to see, okay, if I collaborate, my numbers grow or they drop. If I drop in this season or this time of year, it's not, I get to test it out month to month, song to song, artwork to artwork, like video to video. So it's to me, I just want to understand. Like I want to understand what my audience is, why they listen, why I'm talking to them, what they want from me, and how I can better achieve my goals and learn what those goals are as well. It's just I'm learning as I go. So I think this year is going to teach me so much about how to learn, and the biggest word of the year I think is going to be adapting. I think I'm going to have to adapt so much this year, and I have no idea what that's going to look like. But I've gotten pretty good at it over 2020 and even 2019. So I welcome it. It's a challenge that I look forward to because we're here now. And really, thankfully, I'm just grateful that I have an audience still, that I am surviving through this pandemic, that I have a home to live in, that I still have fans, and that I have the ability to still create. I still was able to, I'm working on a music video that's coming out. It's probably my best video to date, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
The fact that I can say those things and feel confident in saying them in this pandemic.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In this pandemic, you made the best video.
And that's what's interesting. It's like, wow, maybe I found the best team, and like I wouldn't have met this team if not for the pandemic, because the gig I got wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the pandemic, right? So it's just really interesting how those things kind of formulate. And I think 13 Floor is a really powerful album, but I think that some of the music I'm going to be putting out is even stronger. And I think some of the visuals are even stronger. I think the photo shoots are stronger. I think my mental is stronger. I think I'm stronger. And I just can't wait to see what that strength brings me this year.
Yeah. And everyone's looking forward to it, including the fans and myself. And we'll be putting every single that your management sends me and everything in the rotation and cosign. The one question I have for you that's important is we look at the different types of female MCs that we've had in hip hop. You look at, as a rapper like yourself, you remind me a lot of Lauryn Hill. You're a teacher. You teach a lot. You speak on what's going on around the world and everything that's going on in the culture. Then you have a rapper like Lil Kim. Do you feel as though that females need the best representation or better representation in hip hop because everyone looks at Lil Kim in a certain way?
I think we just need more representation. I think it's fine what Lil Kim embodies and embodied. I think it's important that we had that. I think that spoke to a lot of the women empowerment, sexual liberation that we see now. I think that is very important. And I know that I'm just not coming with that. So I think it's important that those pockets do get filled. I think we need variety because we have every type of male rapper you could think of. We don't have a void, and you could just find it, and it exists. Someone's making it. So I think we need that as well in the hip hop community for women, and in the rap game for women. I think that you just have a little bit less of a representation today of kind of maybe more the side of things that like somebody like me does, or maybe like a Rhapsody does, right? Or even like Tierra Whack or something like that. Like, yeah, she got a lot of notoriety, but like not to the degree of like, like WAP or something like that. So it's like, wow, I think it's important to make space for the Meg Thee Stallions and Cardi B and Normani and stuff like that. I think that or Mulatto, I think we also need just kind of like a balance of representation. So like it would be nice to see artists that are women that speak to different themes get kind of like a lot of those views as well. Those same strong records. But like I rock with like a lot of the other stuff too. Like Runway, the track she just did with Missy Elliott, the ATM track, I like that. That's fun. It's cool. It's a vibe. It's simple, but it's cool. And I like the video. And I don't think that we should lose that. Like I think that stuff is inspired by like the Lil Kims and Nicki Minaj and stuff like that.
Foxy Brown.
Foxy Brown and Eve. Like, well, Eve is, I guess, maybe even a little bit more on that kind of the side that maybe I'm on. But like what I'm saying is you had more representation even then, because you had Queen Latifah, and then you had Kim, and you had Foxy.
MC Light.
Now, MC Light, right?
Yeah.
You had this kind of like plethora that you could kind of choose. Oh, I like this, or I like this. And now it's just, I think you have a smaller palette, and then you even hear people complain, oh, females, they all rap about this and that. And that's not true. It's just that is what's coming on your radar, on your Spotify or Apple Music playlists, because that's what's getting mainstream plays. That doesn't mean that that's what's coming out only. So I don't think that we should eliminate anything. I just think we need to make more space for people like me, to be honest. And that's part of why I do what I do, trying to carve out that lane without compromising. And if it works, it works. If not, but that's my goal, you know?
Yeah. And we're looking forward to that. Anything else that you would like to speak on? AntiSocial is out now on all music platforms. Go check that out. And it's a great track here. It's going to be in the rotation. Anything else you want to speak about?
I would just say, honestly, like everybody, like follow me on.
Yeah, on Instagram and Twitter and all the social platforms, all social media.
Yeah, it's the same spelling on everything. Haviah Mighty. That's it. I am most active on Instagram. So if you want to get in touch for any reason, that's probably the only place you'll really be able to reach me. Maybe Twitter, not Facebook. But like for the music, you know, it's Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Bandcamp, everything. SoundCloud, it's everywhere. So wherever you can find it, YouTube, there are free options, even if you're not enrolled in one of these paid subscriber kind of streaming platforms. I'm also on YouTube, that's free. I'm also on Audio Mac, that's free, right? So find the music anywhere. I try to make sure the music is as accessible as it can be. Find me on all social platforms, and I have a lot of music coming this year. That's what I would say. I can't even say too much other than like I have so much coming, and I think all of it is so strong, and I'm so excited. I think it would be difficult to engage with me this year and not really like something, whether it's already dropped or hasn't yet. I just have so much coming, and I feel like it, you know, it might sound like, oh, I just got so much and I'm just so ready to drop it all. But like, no, like we have a lot, but like it's been done. Like we curate it and we ensure that you get it at the right time and that you get, you know, the right amount of exposure and it has the right artwork, and we create those moments, you know, we create those moments. So hopefully you can join me, everyone that's listening, on those moments. I can't wait to share them with everybody that's willing to listen and join me on this journey. And I'm so looking forward to hopefully be out of this crazy like social distancing bubble. If that ever happens this year, those shows are going to be the craziest shows I've ever played. You know, I'll build my stamina back up, get back in the gym. And we're going hard. So fingers crossed 2021, we get to, you know, actually see each other. But if not, I'm still coming with it. That's what I'd say.
Yep. And I'm sure all your fans believe as well as I do. I want to thank you, Haviah Mighty, for coming on my show here today. I had a great time speaking with you. We talked a lot about serious things, important topics that people should tune in after the interview, even though it's not live anymore. Even if they didn't tune in, it's something that people should tune into, not only to learn about yourself, but just things we talked about, including racism and all the important things we talked about today. And we'd love to have you back once you're ready to drop a project or anything else you want to promote. I'll be in touch with your management too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you have their contact, you already know what it is. Hit us up anytime. And I would love to come back.
Yeah. All right, Haviah Mighty, I want you to take care and stay safe. All right.
All right. Thank you so much. You too.
Yep. No problem.
All right.
Yeah. Bye-bye.